Welcome to the second episode of the second series of the Women in CX podcast, a series dedicated to real talk conversations between women in customer experience. Listen in as we share our career stories, relive the moments that shaped us, and voice our opinions as loudly as we like about all manner of CX subjects. I'll be your host, Clare Muscutt, and in today's episode we'll be hearing one woman's story about becoming an independent woman of colour, side hustling, patriarchy, and the resilience handed down through generations of Nigerian women. Let me introduce you to today's inspiring guest. She graduated with a law degree from Hull University before switching into HR management for her master's and began her career in telecoms before moving into the public sector and starting her own CX consulting business, Client Service Coach, in 2018. A true entrepreneur, she founded her latest venture during the pandemic as CEO of Nemo Silk. Please welcome to the show, CX sister, Lara Felix-Omonubi. Hey, Lara.
Hi, Claire.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. It's pretty hot today, though, right?
It is baking, boiling. I could not even wear any makeup today or anything. I've got my fan in front of me, and I'm just hoping I don't melt before the end of this.
Me too. So just welcome to all the listeners as well. It's great to have you with us today. So just to begin, I thought it's probably worth setting the scene a little bit because you and I have spoken before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
So just for the listeners, Lara is one of the women who actually inspired me to make the podcast because before all of this started, I did an IGTV series interviewing entrepreneurs on IGTV, and Lara was my second person in the studio and actually the first person I ever had a live real talk with that went on broadcast. So I'd just like to say thanks so much for that moment that spurred me on, Lara.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it was a pleasure that you reached out at the time that you did. It was very timely, I think, and it was needed. So yeah, it was honestly a pleasure to liaise with you and to have that chat. And I feel like when we were talking, maybe you're just a very personable person, but it felt as though we had known each other. And even now we just kind of get on and we're able to have honest, challenging, meaningful, and necessary conversations. So thank you also for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And if anyone's interested in watching the talk, it was actually about not only entrepreneurship, but Black Lives Matter around the time that George Floyd was murdered. And that's available on our YouTube channel too. So on to today. Right. So I think I want to go back to that entrepreneurship conversation and have a slightly different one today because things have moved on slightly, haven't they, from where you were in your business journey. Yeah. So I think today I'm going to call this episode Lara Felix talking about becoming an independent woman. What do you think of that title?
I think it sounds good because becoming is a verb, and I like that you used becoming because it's a journey. So I find that with everything that we're doing, you can never really say you have arrived. You know, it's progressive. So I like the title. It's very much so me.
Awesome. I'll definitely write that one down now then. Officially, that is our title. And that means I'm ahead of schedule for this week. Well done, me. So I know I asked you this question last time and I'm going to ask it again, but actually this time I'm back on the side hustle too. So Lara, is the side hustle struggle real?
Deep breath. So that should already give you a bit of an inkling into how big of a yes that is. The side hustle is real. It is very real. It's alive. It's active. And I know that I'm not the only one on the journey of the side hustle, and I know that you're not the only one either. So there's a lot of us that fit into this category, and especially in the world we live in today, where we know that one stream of income, one means of earning a living, quote unquote, it's not enough. It can't sustain you. And in a world where we have diverse passions and we're allowed to explore those passions and explore those different creative things that are built up inside us. We don't want to be limited. We don't want to be boxed. So it's us basically finding a way to work together and put everything together and be the fullness of us, which then results in side hustles.
Mhm.
So with an S, so the side hustle might
Wonderful.
not be one, it could be more than one.
And
And that's my reality. That is what I'm living in.
yeah. Yeah, how many side hustles have you got on now?
Actively two.
2 side
And
hustles and
yeah,
a full-time job.
and a full-time job. And that's amongst every other thing that I'm doing. So I could think of two other things in addition to the two side hustles that I'm doing that may not necessarily generate income or, work on a more consistent basis, but the side hustle is real and they
I
are
love
many. And I don't see them dwindling down anytime soon, to
Oh,
say the least.
what are the other 2 things you've got on the go then that I didn't know about?
So I am kind of a jack of all trades, right? So I also MC.
No
I'm a
way!
host, yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, so I MC, but it's a low key kind of thing. So because people know that I'm good at coordinating and planning and doing that sort of stuff, they'll be like, you know what, I've got an event and I would really like for you to host it. I would really like for you to MC. So yeah, I MC as well, as crazy as that may seem and out of pocket. So you've got this corporate, very business, very professional lady here, and then on the other hand, you can catch me on a Saturday emceeing and getting people on the dance floor or coordinating an event or doing something very fun and outlandish. So that's one. And then the other thing is I'm very active in my local community church. So
Ah,
I coordinate services and I do a bit of planning. I do some strategic work in terms of getting our programs ready for a Sunday service or if we have an event and that sort of stuff. So very, very much so active in other things apart from the two main side hustles, which you know about already.
yeah, but let's tell the listeners at home because they don't know. What are the
Okay.
2 main side hustles, if
Okay,
that wasn't
so
enough?
so I don't know. I think client service coach is my baby. I don't want to classify it as a side hustle. I'm inclined to say that my 9 to 5 is my side hustle and client
Mhm.
service coach is my main child, but they're interchangeable, right? And
Mhm.
then I am launching my own brand of upholstery covers and silk bedding specifically geared towards children, but we have got a few things in the adult range as well. So it's called Mimo Silk, Mimo Silk. And
Nice plug by Lara.
just putting it out there, you asked.
I did.
So I do silk bedding, silk accessories, and silk accessories and upholstery covers for children as well.
So this is the truest entrepreneurial journey, right? You're
Absolutely.
I came up with an idea, hadn't seen it anywhere, checked out the marketplace, found there wasn't anybody doing it, found
Yeah.
your suppliers, sourced your supply chain, designed your websites. As the client service coach, has your skills in being able to design your own customer journey and target experience come in useful?
Absolutely. And I think this has been the truest test of being behind the principals table, essentially.
Mm,
I typically go in and say, well, show me how you've embedded the customer's persona into
yeah.
developing your product. Tell me where and what you thought about when you were creating this particular
Mm,
stage or this particular interaction for the customer. So
mm,
I found myself through creating this product and going through this entire process, I found myself constantly thinking at every stage, is this going to be beneficial to the people who are going to be using it? How
mm,
are parents going to feel? What emotion is this evoking? Even up to the placing of the logo, even up to the choosing of the colors,
mm,
and just being super, super mindful and intentional about everything I was doing,
mm,
because I'm like, I can't afford to fail. I can't afford to not get it right from the onset, and there's no reason why I shouldn't get it right from the onset, really, because I've got all the tools that I need at my disposal. I have it up here, so now it's time to apply it into my processes and
mm,
how I'm actually engaging with my customer base. So I think I am using myself as a case study of what a good example of ensuring that your customer experience is right, and the truest form of that is with a product. With a product is something that's tangible. People who are who do things that are more service oriented, it can be very subjective, yeah, in measuring customer experience and customer feedback. But when you've got a product, I find that the responses and the feedback is objective, because it's you've got a tangible thing in front of you, and it's more about the practicalities. It's not necessarily about the know-how or the style or the communication or the way you've spoken or whatever the case may be. When you've got a product, when you've got something that's tangible, the customer experience is different, because the product itself is speaking without you having to explain yourself or to discuss or to kind of get a buy-in. The product does the talking.
Well, it's got to, hasn't it? You made me think of a few different things there.
Yeah.
So I think first off, having started my own consulting business a couple of years ago, that during the pandemic pretty much disappeared because in real life stuff couldn't happen. I couldn't do the keynote speaking. Having a side hustle or, working on something else as an alternative stream of income is so important. But when I set up that business, I didn't have to really think so much about the customer experience itself, in terms of what I applied, because it's relatively simple. It was me providing a service, and as long as I communicated well, communicated well, and it was lovely to my clients, delivered a great service. That was quite intuitive. But in the last couple of months, working on my two new side hustles, so building this membership community for women in CX and building this coaching business proposition that I'm launching tomorrow, albeit by the time this airs, it will have been live for a couple of months. Really having to go back to the stuff that I preach in terms of what I do for my clients. So when I first started CMX, I started by helping startups to start their company, but I wasn't just helping them with customer experience, which brings me to my next point, which is, I think we forget a lot of the time just how much the product or the service itself, the proposition, has to do with the success of a business. And for me, there's too much, I think, attention put on CX as some kind of panacea that will cure everything. If you've not got a great product, a great proposition, a great service, no amount of great CX is ever going to cure that. So, so I think it's really great for women like ourselves who kind of get to see it from so many different angles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing quite compares to starting a business yourself, having to be the CEO, the marketing director, the customer experience director, the whole piece. Because I think, when you work in a business, you don't get to see all of that because you're responsible for this part. But for big businesses, I think, kind of getting out of that silo mentality is so important when it comes to CX, because CX should be influencing the proposition as much as how it is delivered. And if those two things aren't interfacing, hey, you're wasting your time, right?
Absolutely. And one of the first things I do when I have a new client, and I'm happy that you mentioned it, is I understand their business model. I understand what service it is that they're providing, or what product it is that they're providing. And I try and understand, okay, what was the vision behind it? What was the purpose? What was the intention? And has that intention and that purpose been fulfilled holistically? Because what happens is that, as you rightly said, people treat CX as a silo to the product and the service. No. People are more smarter than what you think they are. You're not going to just say, I'm really sorry, here's a voucher, and because that's like a band-aid. Getting to the root cause of why the experience was not holistically satisfactory is just as important. And if you haven't got a product that meets certain standards, that's the first thing we need to address. Because that impacts confidence in terms of how you're selling it. That impacts credibility, integrity. It impacts a whole load of stuff. So it's about finding the balance between having a great product and a great service, and how those two things meet and marry with one another to support one another, essentially.
Yeah, I'd maybe say it's three: the what, the how, and the who. Anyway, so I'm taking us a bit off track here into that debate. So the next question I think I'm going to ask you is going against what I'd said initially, because I think we talked about so much awesome stuff there. I think I want to talk about how in the last conversation you told me how proudly Nigerian you are.
Yeah.
And of late, I've been meeting so many Nigerian women
Oh, you.
from Nigeria, because I went and I didn't physically go. I did my
Yeah.
first in Lagos for West
Yeah.
Africa summit, and on
Mhm.
Instagram met loads of women who live in Nigeria, but also in the UK too. And I've noticed something about you ladies. You are seriously strong and very determined, and you stand out from the crowd in terms of your confidence to put yourselves out there. I just wondered, is this something about Nigerian culture that makes women so strong and confident?
Absolutely. I think Nigerians in general, they're very resilient people. We are a group of very resilient, very hardworking people, and the environment we live in has made it so that people need to put their best foot forward and their strongest foot forward at all times. So we are a developing country. So you can imagine the cons that are placed in front of us. But I think one thing that is unique about Nigerians is that they've taken that con and they've been able to make it a positive thing. They've been able to make lemonade out of
Love it.
lemons, you know. So they've been able to actually, we've been able to actually transform the way the status quo.
Mhm.
We don't let things around us define us. And I would definitely say it has to do with the culture as well. You know, the culture is very strong, very independent. It's very loud, it's very boisterous. Everything that a Nigerian does is a little bit over the top. You know, I would tell you to go and look at our Nigerian weddings.
Oh, okay, I've
You
never been
see
to
a
one.
Nigerian wedding, you will know what over the top is. And even if you go to less affluent areas, there's a form of joy that naturally comes out from those environments. So it's I think it's more so about the mindset and the community that's around us. So another thing about Nigeria is that we're very community oriented, very much so. So big families, loads of friends, loads of aunties, loads of uncles. So when you're in that sort of environment, you have to have your voice heard some sort of way, right? So of course you're going to be loud. Of course you're going to put your best foot forward, and you've got people who are rooting for you on the left, on the right. So yeah, I think that's a common thing with Nigerians in general. In terms of Nigerian women, I am happy. I am proud to be a Nigerian woman. Nigerian women are strong. We are tough. We are even more resilient than the average Nigerian, you know, than the average Nigerian man. And that's because I think we've been dealt a hard card in the past. And we know that there's some things that have to be taken, that's not going to be given to you just that easily. So Nigerian women are very, very academically inclined, you know, hard workers. A lot of times, I know that Nigerian women have had to be the breadwinner in their families due to one thing or the other. And, you know, Nigeria is not a welfare state. It's not a welfare society. So it's either you go out there and make something happen, or you don't survive, you know. So when you kind of don't have a choice, you find a way to make things happen. I know my grandma, she owned a farm which was across about 2 acres of land. She used to farm, she managed it herself, and she had no husband to help her. So that sort of hardworking nature then went into my so that was my great grandmother. It went into my grandma, who then came to this country, studied to be a nurse, was a nurse, went back, used her degree to do nursing and to help people in the community. And then that entrepreneurial sort of hardworking thing transpired down to my mum, who also owns several businesses, is a hardworking woman. So it's almost like I've seen this thing come down from
Very.
generation to generation. How can I be any different? And all you do is top it, isn't it? So it's just about us topping what has happened before us, because we have a legacy to uphold, essentially. So yeah, and we know that the world is not necessarily fair to women,
Mm,
as we've discussed before.
mm,
The world is not necessarily fair to Black people.
mhm,
And the world isn't necessarily fair to Black women. So you're a woman and you're Black. You have
mm,
something more to prove, you have something more to fight for. So yeah, there is a grit, there is a resilience in the Nigerian women, and we've just learned to be that way, and I think we love it. I think we, even the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we express ourselves, it's just full of confidence, it's full of life, and yeah.
it's awesome. And just picking up on something you said there. So you said, so Nigerian people, especially Nigerian women, had some specific hardships or were dealt difficult cards. What did you
Yes.
mean by
So specific hardships to do with the way the culture is set up. So the culture of different tribes can be set up in a very oppressive manner. So in a very patriarchal manner where women are limited and constrained to certain roles, such as, still being the person who has to stay at home, take care of the
that?
kids, and that's it, doesn't have a voice when it comes to family matters. And I think a generation of women arose who challenged that status quo and said, you know what, I was born for more than this. you
Mm,
know I also deserve an education, because there's still some parts in Nigeria where education for women is limited.
mm,
And we know that women are so resourceful. It's like seeing a star and putting a blanket over it,
mm.
because of an archaic mindset, right?
The patriarchy. Phew.
It's patriarchy at its finest, and our culture is entwined in that. I know there's specific cultures where, even after, if a woman is widowed, for example, she is not entitled to anything. So she and her children are left on their own. So there have been instances where a woman, unfortunately, has been widowed at a young age. And because she was never allowed to work, she was never allowed to fend for herself or do anything, she was never allowed to get an education or make something of herself. She's
Mm,
been left in such a rut, and for children that come out of that environment, for example, if that woman was to have daughters,
mm,
the daughters would obviously see that and say, I am making up my mind that this will never be me. I
mm,
will always have a source of income for myself. I will always make sure that I'm able to fend for myself and my children to come. And I'm sure the mother in that instance will also imbibe that in her children, that, listen, you need to be independent,
mm,
because you're not always going to have people to rely on. So I think it's this is this force of independence that has come through and has happened through unfortunate circumstances, but necessary circumstances, to
mm,
push us into the light, essentially. So
mm,
that is what has happened. And I think we can never ever negate the place of seeing what the generation before us have done, because that's how we learn.
agreed.
We're constantly reading memoirs and books about people's lives and that sort of thing. So what we're doing is we're looking at their mistakes, we're
Mm,
looking at their cons, we're looking at their pros, the things that they succeeded at, and
mm,
we're taking the things that they succeeded at, we're learning from the mistakes that they've made. And that's what Nigerian women have had to do.
mm,
And this is the way we shine, this is the way we flourish.
mm, mm. And you also said, so kind of like we've got gender as one challenge, but then being a
Yeah.
woman of color is like the next kind of challenge.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So I think being a woman of color is even harder, because a classic example would be the view that women of color are given.
Mhm,
And that is that they are strong, they can handle it.
mm,
But because a certain group of people are strong and can handle something, doesn't mean they need to,
mhm,
right? So in the bid to think they are strong, they can handle it, there's a lot of negating
mm,
of emotion, of
mm,
opportunity, of responsibility, of support, of love, of care that happens. So we find that Black women are looked at as, well, they can handle it, they're tough, they're loud, they're confident, they don't need to be handed certain things on a platter like other women are. And
mm,
not to say that those women are handed it on a platter literally,
mm,
but I'm just using that as a metaphor, as an example for opportunities.
mm,
So a Black woman typically would have to do more than her white woman counterpart to
Mm.
be recognized, to be appreciated. And I've seen a lot of things in different industries that have highlighted that. So we know the things that people of color face in general, and I we see it if we want to use the case of police brutality, which is one of the things that we spoke about in our earlier conversation. If you see the way police officers treat black women,
Mm.
it's the same way, it's the same aggression as they would use to treat a black man.
Mm.
Does that make sense? So does it make sense? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
Because
make sense.
it's
I
disproportionate.
I understand what you're saying, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. So is that just
No.
down to like bias or
So there's an
racism or
there's racism in there. There could be racism in there. There could be an unconscious bias, because I'm not one of those people who accounts everything to racism. That, oh, well, she didn't get the job because she was black, or he didn't get it because he was black. I don't account anything disproportionately to racism.
Mm.
It's an unconscious bias that just tends to happen. If
Yeah.
we look at years ago, years and years ago, black women have been doing hard labor sort of jobs
Mm.
inadvertently, even while supporting the home, such as carrying firewood and just doing gritty,
Mm.
hard sort of jobs. And even when it comes down to black women's features, they're stronger, right?
Mm.
They're different, they're unique, they're bolder. We've got bigger hips, bigger bones, a bigger nose, a wider face. So little things like that can create an unconscious bias in somebody, and I know specifically in a research came out about a new set of doctors, so I think first year doctors, and they said that in the labor wards, because one thing we see is that more black women die.
Mortality rate. Yeah,
The
I've seen that.
mortality rate for black women in after having a child is times 4 of
Mm.
that of a white woman. And why is that?
Mm.
So the research found that a group of doctors, non unbeknownst to them, just believed that when black women complained of being in pain,
Wow.
that their pain threshold was actually higher than a white woman's, and they just thought that they probably were just exaggerating, and they were really in pain. So you see those instances more times than not, that a black woman would say, "Excuse me, I'm uncomfortable, I'm in pain," and they
Mm.
would be ignored, or they would be pain medication would be withheld from them, or it's until something is extremely critical and dire that
Mm.
something happens. Anybody that wants to challenge this should just go and look at the research. The mortality rate for black women
Wow.
is higher, and it's just the numbers. It's not a negotiable thing. So why is that when they're being treated by the exact same people?
Mm.
And I'm not saying that people are doing it intentionally.
Just
you know
understand.
it's
Mm.
it's just a perception, and it's just you're thinking, oh, look at her, she's rounder, or her skin is thicker. Because if you were to push into my arm like this,
Mm.
you're not going to see a mark on the surface. If I was to push into your arm, Claire, like this,
Mm.
I'm going to see a mark there.
Mm. I
So
think
that's me kind of justifying why I see reason as to why you would possibly think I'm not feeling the pain the same way you are, because my skin color is different, and the way things appear on my skin is different
mm.
from yours. So it's obvious when you are in pain, Claire, because we can see it on you. It's not obvious when I'm in pain
You don't feel
because of my melanin. So yeah, it's just a whole raft of things that seeps into every
mm.
sphere of life. So that's just the medical
Mm.
side of things. And
Mm.
as for what I've seen in the workplace, women are underrepresented. Black women are
Mm.
even more underrepresented.
Mm.
So I think it's something that's changing, because I love women in general, because I see women rallying together.
Mm.
Women are rallying together from all backgrounds, all ages.
Mm.
Women are rallying, coming together to truly and genuinely support one another. One of the pages I follow on LinkedIn, Female Lead,
Yes,
the
I
best,
love the female lead.
the best, the
It's always
best.
mm.
So it just shows that there is a community of women out there. There are people who are mindful of these things, and that we're trying to change. We're trying to make a change, but it's unfortunate that the change is not coming fast enough.
So just back to the theme of independence then, and I realise we've probably spoken for 30 minutes already.
Oh goodness!
You and I get chatting.
Oh, 35.
35. Oh wow. And now Joachim's just interrupted. I don't know how do you guys go back again?
So we could just go into the next question.
Yeah. But I'm just conscious because we try to make them 30 minutes. So I might just ask you the top advice question, and then we'll finish.
Okay.
There's still loads of great stuff in there. Is that all right, Joachim? Okay. Could you just email Sharon and say we'll be 5 minutes? Because it's 1:30 already. Okay.
Try and keep it quick. I noticed that I talk a lot.
Me too, babe. Me too. So, Lara, we've talked about entrepreneurship. We've talked about becoming independent women. We've talked about your journey, the journey of your ancestors, the theme that runs down history. When there's strong women, it courses through our veins, and it's unstoppable. I just wondered what your kind of top 3 messages or pieces of advice are to other women out there, perhaps on an entrepreneurial journey or discovering their way to independence. What would you want to say to them?
One thing I would say to start off with is knowing your why. What is your vision for your life? What fires you up? What is that thing that you connect with the most? Where's your passion? Understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, that will lead on to point 2, which is to maximize your place of influence, maximize the resources around you, maximize and enhance those things that you see that are your talents, right? So when you understand your vision, you understand your why, you understand those foundational precepts, then you can start building on it and saying, actually, this is my why, because my talent and my strength lies here. So I'm going to maximize this. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to be brave. I'm not going to be limited by the things that I see around me or by anyone. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned on this journey is you need to be your own biggest cheerleader. And that's the reality. You need to be your biggest cheerleader. You need to be your biggest marketer, your own marketer. You need to be your biggest investor. You need to invest in yourself. So understand that. And then the third thing would be seize every opportunity that comes your way. Forget about how it's going to work out. Say yes. Okay? Say yes. When Claire first approached me, my first answer was yes. And then I was like, wait, what did I sign up to? Go back and then you figure it out. But seize these opportunities, because as we've said, opportunities for women don't come by as half as often as they do for men. So seize every opportunity, every partnership opportunity, every interaction, seize it. Every opportunity to market yourself, seize it. Every opportunity to blow your own trumpet, to toot your own horn, and to just talk about why you are great at what you're doing, seize it, because
no one else is going to do it for you.
No one else is going to do it for you. And there is no other you out there. There is nobody like you. You might think, oh, the market I want to go into is saturated. But actually, if you were created for something, if you know that this is why I am on earth, this is why God has created me to be this kind of woman that I am, and I'm full of these things, and when I do this, I find fulfillment. You have to pursue it. You have to pursue it. So, and I would say this, sometimes what you're called to, what your vision is what your solution kind of is to a particular particular problem, is not what you find joyous, right? So let me just explain this a little bit. So it could potentially be that this is something that upsets you. Like whenever you see this, you just get upset with it, and you're like, you could have done this, you could have done that, or this is the solution to that. That might be it. That might be your why. And that was what it was for me when I started Client Service Coach. It was that I was seeing bad customer service, and it would just annoy me. And I would write reviews and I would contact people and I would speak to a manager, and I was like, this is my why. It wasn't necessarily something that I woke up in the morning thinking, oh, today I just want to think about customer service and how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that. No, it was more like in my day to day, I was noticing that, oh, that was a great interaction. I really appreciated that. Or I love the way that customer service agent spoke to me. Or I love the way I was greeted when I entered the store. Or that shouldn't have happened in this store. Or that they should fix their online chat box, So just try and draw inferences, and the sky is not your limit.
I love that, babe. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. You are an absolute queen.
Thank you. You too, Claire.
I love chatting to you. You're always guaranteed real talk with Lara Felix. 100. And that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. So it's time to say goodbye, Lara. And to thank you and to thank the listeners at home. I can't wait to hang out with you very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Claire, for putting on this amazing show, this platform for women. It's amazing. And I can't wait for the CX women community to launch. That is something to definitely be on the lookout for. So yeah.
Thank you. So I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye, Lara.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Women in CX podcast with me, Clare Muscutt. If you enjoyed the show, please drop us a like, subscribe, and leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening or watching on. And if you want to know more, please join us at womenincx.community and follow the Women in CX page on LinkedIn. Join us again next week, where I'll be talking to another inspiring woman in CX about her experience of becoming a working mother, founding a business with her best friend in CX recruitment, and her advice on how to get hired. See you all next week.